From my experience with college, I think that the system is outdated. I think that it's their fault.
The skills required to be a great student and get a degree are not the same skills and not the same muscles required to be successful um, in the marketplace, if you will.
Honestly, I often think about it like this. You have to be a hustler. Like, there's no other way around it. You have to be a darn good hustler.
So just because you're becoming more skilled as a musician doesn't mean that that skill translates over to what the market wants and what it likes.
Another thing that I think is the big disconnect is musicians don't learn about business.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I learned how to play, I learned my theory, and then when I graduated, I was like, okay, so what am I going to do now?
Hey, welcome back to Piano Lesson with Warren. This is a channel where we talk and discuss everything relating to gospel music. And as you can see, this week is a little bit different. We had a little panel discussion a few days ago with some of my online buddies. A lot of you guys probably don't know that we all know each other in the online space. But who you saw was David Hutchinson, Corey Taylor, Daquan Bowen, and Sean Wilson. We're all online piano teachers, and we all sort of specifically niche to teaching gospel piano, Christian contemporary music, and so on. So these channels are channels you should be checking out as well if you're interested in learning gospel music, because we all have our own little different unique twist as to how we teach the things that we sort of specialize in. And this week we decided to have a discussion about, should you go to college if you want to become a professional musician or not? And we're talking about music school, music college, so to speak, because I was the one who decided to put this panel together, and it's a question I've had for a few months now, generated based on a post that I saw on Facebook from one of my friends. And the observation was this: the overwhelming majority of mainstream artists today does not have a college music degree. They may have a degree in something else, but most of them didn't go to school for music. We're talking about gospel artists, pop artists, R&B artists, country artists, you name it. If you look at the majority of the people who are crushing it, doing well in music, they didn't study music. So it got me thinking, is it worth going to school for a college degree, seeing that most of the people who are doing well in music anyway didn't study music? Or at least that was the post that someone made, or rather a question that they framed. Is it worth going to school for music, seeing that the overwhelming majority of people who did not go to school of music are outperforming the people who did go to school for music? What's going on there? So I decided to put the band back together and discuss it with people who are also in music like myself. And if you want to hear what we discussed and talk about, then you definitely want to stay tuned. We discuss a lot of things. We even talked about our own experience in music. We also talked about how we structure our own business, because we all teach online and we all do it a little bit differently. So stay tuned. There's going to be lots of cool things that we're going to share with you.
Why is that most people who decide to spend thousands and thousands of dollars studying with the best professors just wash out? I don't know if you guys know any Berklee graduates, but I know 4 Berklee graduates who just disappeared into the background, who are badass vocalists, keyboard players, drummers. And, Berklee has been like the standard for musicians who want to venture out into the pop, jazz, and gospel world. So it got me thinking, what's going on? Why is it that the folks who just grind it out are breaking through, and the ones who have invested in the best tutors and college degrees and all this stuff just wash out? What you guys think? Are y'all studied music formally?
Yeah.
Yes.
I didn't.
You did.
I did.
You did, Sean? Oh, you did math. You're a mathematician.
I mean, I went to a music college though, so I was in.
You were
I got it that way, but
Yeah.
I didn't actually take the formal classes though.
Okay. And David, you just sort of just picked it up on the way coming up.
Yeah, I mean, I went to school in the Bahamas. So in the Bahamas for high school, you pick a major, and my
Mhm.
major was music in high school. So I got music education that way, some formal training, but I didn't study music in college. I mean, I took one or two classes here or there, but I mean, I don't have a degree.
And Corey, you have a master's.
Yeah.
Daquan, you did some college stuff too.
Yeah, at a community college. I just went to the local community college in my city, took a couple classes, got the associates, but most of my learning came from church, and
Yeah.
took some private lessons on the side. But
So all of you probably know musicians who pursued music at the tertiary level, and who either washed out or just like not using the degree or tried to go mainstream and fail. What you think's causing that?
I'll go first, man. I'll tell my take on it. I mean, from my experience with college, I think that the system is outdated. I think that it's their fault, and because there's really like the YouTube kind of way of learning, the way we're doing things is kind of new and still breaking through. And when I went to college, it was all traditional, right?
You go
But
learn
yet-
some classical pieces and that's it.
Right, but yet the tools you need to actually get a job,
Are
they're
not taught.
talking about that. Like Ableton Live, for example. Like you need to learn Ableton Live if you want to do any type of mainstream gig. Yet no one's teaching Ableton Live in the traditional sense. So I think the way it's structured is just
There's a disconnect.
rolled. Yeah, it's a disconnect. They're still teaching Bach. Like Bach is the GOAT, but that's like in the 1600s. See what I'm saying? So I think that they're just behind the times.
What do you think, Sean? What do you think's going on?
Um,
Why aren't trained musicians breaking into the mainstream?
because and again, I'm definitely not the expert on this. Like I told you in the text. Yeah, I feel, but I do feel like I think there's two issues that I like to bring up. I think the first thing is that I think musicians probably think that skill automatically translates to success in the market, and I don't think that those things are always going to be hand in hand. So just because you're becoming more skilled as a musician doesn't mean that that skill translates over to what the market wants and what it likes.
Mm-hmm.
So I've always felt like musicians should be taking courses in networking, in relatability, because you could be really great, but you got to be able to relate not only on a personal level,
Mm-hmm.
just relating in general, how to network, how to relate to people, but the music has to be relatable.
Yeah.
And if the music isn't relatable, if it's too theoretical, the higher you go, the narrower the market is.
Yeah.
Because people don't understand it. They just don't understand those kind of chords. They can't rap. I mean, the musicians get it. We love it. But I think the average person, it may not be relatable to them. So in my opinion, I think it's a relatable issue.
When you go to school, I mean, I know when I went, I spent 8 years. You basically had two options. Door number one, classical music. Door number two, jazz music.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, how many people do we know who likes either of those? I know my wife is not interested in either.
Right.
My brothers, my sisters, they're not interested. And so most of the musicians who now graduate and either get to a high level of performance had to figure out the other markets, as you say. It's like,
Right.
okay, if I want to do pop, what's going on in the pop world and how do I break in? If I want to do gospel, if I want to do something more niche, country or crossover, all that you got to figure out. Another thing that I think is the big disconnect is musicians don't learn about business.
Mm-hmm.
I learned how to play. I learned my theory. And then when I graduated, I was like, okay, so what am I going to do now? I had to figure out how to market myself, how to get students. Not to mention when I got into the online world, that was a whole unicorn. had to learn about video editing, recording,
Mm.
plugins, website development, audience building, you know,
Right.
which is all of that. It's marketing. And I had to learn it on my own through a lot of trial and error. I'm sure you guys have experienced that. Beating your head on a wall, kind of like just, why is this not working? Or why is someone canceling? Or how do I get them to come back? All of that stuff you got to have to figure out on your own. There's no courses on that stuff right now.
I think as someone who's gone through a lot of years of education as well, like you, the skills required to be a great student and get a degree are not the same skills, or not the same muscles required to be successful um, in the marketplace, if you will. Now, there are many that can do both, but they're separate skills. And a lot of times, the guys that are in the classroom studying the theory and taking the test and doing that, that's not what's needed to be a success um, in the real world. And I'll tell you one story. There's a guy uh, when I was at Georgia State getting my master's. During the time I went to Georgia State, it was like Piano U. Like everybody that played that was like nice was at the school at the same time. It was like 7 of us. And I remember like we had a guest artist come through, um, and we're all lined up sitting, all the piano guys sitting on the side. And the guest artist asked, I need a piano player to come sit in on this song. And so, you know, we got the hierarchy here. And this young freshman kid gets up. Like, he's not nowhere near the best. But he gets up, sits down, and he plays, and it's okay. But in my mind, I said, yo, he's going to be successful because he's not afraid. And that's not a skill that you learned in school. He's not afraid. Even in a room full of musicians that are better, he's going to get up, do it, learn from his mistakes, and get better. That kid, and I'll tell you his name. His name is Xavier Gordon. Xavier graduated with his undergraduate degree, and I think within a year he had won a Grammy
Wow.
because he just went and kept pushing and pushing. And that skill, how to handle rejection, how to push, how to just go for it. That's not really taught in the classroom. And then the other thing is this something my pastor always says. He says everything you need is in a relationship, even your salvation.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, we're not taught, to Sean's point, how to relate, how to relate to people, how to become related. We're taught how to be great on an instrument, but I know 50 musicians that can play. But to relate to the market, relate to people, you know, almost every guy I've talked to who made it, the reason they made it was because they knew somebody that put them on here. Now they had to have the skill, but the relationship put them in the door, and then the
Mm-hmm.
skill kept them there.
Yeah.
So,
What you think, Mr. Hutchinson?
Yeah, so I think I had written down many of the same things you guys suggested, and Corey began talking about, well, what makes somebody successful in the first place, right? It's this desire to hustle, or this desire to not be afraid. And you know, while we were talking, I began thinking about there are other more successful YouTube channels than ours, right? Um, and if you were to look at those channels, I actually think I've heard you guys play. I've watched many of your videos. Like, I've been watching your videos all week. You guys can outplay those people. But why is their channel more successful, right? They have like better marketing than us, or they have a better like structure. It has nothing to do with skill set. It has everything to do with business and how they're portraying themselves on that side. And I think we can break that down and bring that to, well, why isn't the person who's graduating from music school not successful? Is for the same reason, like that you guys were talking about, marketability, appeal. When we look at those other YouTube channels that are bigger than ours, many times it's because, you know, we're all a little bit more heady. We have a lot more theory knowledge. I mean, Sean, I think, is a freaking genius, and like we look at those other channels, and I mean, it's crazy. Like, right, they're talking about 145 chords, things that appeal to the masses. So it's the same thing with why, I think Sean was talking about this, like, where is our appeal level at? And we could think about that in regards to the person just coming out of school. Like, when you're trying to get into the market, like, there aren't, you got to do like gigs that appeal to everybody, pop gigs, corporate gigs. It's not going to be the jazz gigs that you're looking for or the classical gigs that you're looking for. And so that's my thoughts about it. And I hope that analogy made sense anyway.
Oh, yeah. So I guess one of the questions now is, who becomes the innovators, the leaders, if we constantly have to be dumbing down, so to speak, the music, simplification, then who becomes the sort of the trendsetters? How do we then continue to push music and evolve? Because, I mean, if guys in the 30s and 40s didn't start to experiment with chords and harmonies, we wouldn't have jazz, which wouldn't have influenced the way gospel is and all the other genres of music. If someone didn't decide that, instead of playing all of this stuff straight, as classical players have been doing for hundreds of years, I'm going to start swinging stuff. I'm going to start playing with the rhythm a little bit, to get things more swing. I'm going to put some accidental grace notes all over the place to give it that kind of character. If somebody didn't start breaking away from the mainstream, we wouldn't have this whole evolved genre that we have today. So how do musicians in the 2021 continue to push that envelope without worrying about, well, if I don't play 145 chords and nothing else, I'm not going to become mainstream? How do we handle that balance to make sure that we're still appealing, we're also educating, so to speak, or improving or giving people other options?
I mean, I think the current market loves the gospel sound. Like, you look at all the major artists that look for musicians, looking for bands, they're picking gospel musicians. So I think the gospel sound is relevant and current. It's just, how do we, I guess, present it to what David said, present it in a way that's relatable to the masses. So yeah, I don't think we need to change. I just think more people need to see what we're doing.
So basically, it's just a marketing problem.
Basically, yeah.
People graduating from school don't know how to market themselves or what they want to do.
I certainly don't think it's a relatability problem. I mean, I play in a very different context that's not gospel whatsoever, right? And like, I'll play, let's say I'm just playing the piano, and they hear this fresh way of bringing a hymn, and they're like, it's like they're so amazed by it and they appreciate it so much, and they're like, man, I don't know how to describe the way you're playing, but it doesn't sound like the lady at my church or something like that, right? Yeah. And I wish I could just listen to this all day. And so, yeah, I think it's really a marketing thing. And the truth is, whenever you are presenting something to another group of people, you do dumb down that some of that a bit, right? It's almost like, let's say, everybody knows Chipotle is not real Mexican food, but what do you call it? Right? So you got to call it something. And so I do think in some ways, like, you do have to think about the audience that you're tailoring it to. And so, yeah, I don't think you have to dumb it down all the way to like 145, but there is some of, how do I make this more relatable? We're always thinking about that. So
is college, is it really necessary for someone who wants to become mainstream to go to college? Do you think would you advise, like, you don't need to do all of that because you're not going to learn how to market yourself anyway. You're not going to learn how to become mainstream. So you might as well save your money and invest that in the record deals. What do you think with that? Do you think it's useless to go to college then, seeing that the overwhelming majority of the mainstream artists don't even have college music degrees, so to speak.
This is a controversial question.
Oh yeah,
You know what?
we're getting in there today. We got that. That's what I'm saying. You know, we got to. I wasn't planning on doing all this alone.
I'm gonna say it.
Speak your mind. Come on,
I'm gonna
Sean.
say it. I
All
like.
right, go ahead,
Wait,
Daquan.
my bad. Sean can go.
Daquan's not.
No,
afraid
Daquan,
to-
you're already on it.
It's a waste of time. And I'm gonna say it.
Might as well take a heat. You think it's a waste of time?
I think it's a waste. The college that I went to, I mean, I learned the theory, and that was helpful.
Mm-hmm.
So I learned specific knowledge, but I don't want to say that the information isn't useful, because along with my ear, it allows me to make sense and work more efficiently. So from that perspective, it's effective. But a direct correlation between mainstream or just making a career out of my music, I don't think it's worth it. And I'm gonna stop there.
All right, Sean, you definitely look like you got something to say.
No, the reason I'm smiling is because there was a guy. You know, we all have our website. So there was a guy who just this past week, he was asking me about certifications. He was like, you know, do you provide certifications on your website? And I said, this is a really interesting question. I said, what do you mean? And he said, I just want to make sure that, when I go to play somewhere, that I have the proper certifications. And so I said, well, so I kind of had to have a discussion with him in terms of what different things, different, depending on where he's playing, what they would be, looking for. But it's not like a job like a nurse or a teacher, where they tell you, okay, if you're going to be a teacher, you have to have certification. If you're going to be a nurse, they want to see certain credits. They want to see those things. So that alone tells you that, in terms of the importance of it, it's not as high as those jobs that are going to want to see those transcripts. On the other hand, I don't think some kind of formal training is bad, though, because if you take it to the other side with just a musician who's completely self-taught, then we find out they have a lot of holes.
Yeah.
We find out there's certain theory gaps in there. I think the problem that we're having, I think it's another thing though that I want to mention, is that it's not really ear playing. See, the schools, a lot of the schools it's jazz performance or music performance. You understand what I'm saying? It's playing, when you're playing sheet music, the type of skills that you're going to need for that are totally different than those of us who are ear musicians, right? Mm-hmm. And so I just think I think it's just different, in terms of, I don't think there's a lot of colleges who are really, I don't know a lot about Berklee, I'll be honest with you, because those musicians come out, they kill them. But like I said, from my experience of what I've seen with a lot of colleges, they focus on the more of the musical performance side, the classical side. They're giving you pieces and you're performing those pieces, and things like that. So I think it's a little bit different, but that's kind of how I see it.
Let me jump in here.
Yes, for a guy who has studied for many years, is it? You advise the younger cats to like, hey man, don't do that.
Like my quote that I tell a lot of people when I get this question is, get education. That doesn't mean going to school. Like, get education. So learn the material. So whether I learn drop 2 from Warren's video or learn it at my 3rd year at university, 2nd semester from Professor Lundquist, it's the same information, right? Now, I will say, the university model, to Daquan's point, is a little antiquated, and there's a lot of other things. There's a lot of fluff, and there's a lot of money, unnecessary money. Like I'm paying $10,000-$20,000 per semester. And I don't get to my music courses really until my 2nd year, and then it's a lot of fluff, a lot of stuff that's really not applicable. So university model is a great money making model, um, but I don't recommend it. Depending on what you're trying to do, but I do recommend getting education and getting the information. So I don't recommend being uh, unknowledgeable about the thing. Just there are many routes to get it.
What do you think, David?
I mean, the question is, would I recommend someone
Music
going to
college for someone
music
who wants to go mainstream.
for someone that wants to go mainstream?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think it's a no or a yes answer. I would think you have to ask yourself, why am I going to school? And school provides a systematic way of learning music. And the truth is, even when you're saying, am I going to school? Well, which school are you going to? I went to a school named Lee University, and you would have probably had a great education in the underground music scene at Lee University, but you would never know that, right? Like it even matters what school you're going to. And so I just think if you're asking yourself the question, am I going to school to perform and I need this systematic way of learning, then school is good. If you are a disciplined person and you have other ways of getting that systematic way or that systematic instruction, then I would say you can pursue that route as well. um, I don't know if it's a yes or no answer, but
So here's what I think. I would say if someone asked me, Warren, should I go to college if I want to become mainstream? I would put some pros and cons. If you're gonna have to take out a student loan to go, don't go. I don't think if you want to go to school for music, then you need to go into all that debt. If you can afford to go to college without having to go into all that debt, I would say absolutely go. And apart from the structure that you get from being in a music school and the discipline that it forces you to create if you already don't have that, one of the biggest thing that I think I've got out of going to music school is the connections. I grew up in the country, ain't no connection there. But some of the people that I was able to meet and some of the doors that I was able to open from just being in that environment, I couldn't have gotten that any other way. It's how I ended up in the United States because of college and the people that I met that opened doors for me to get scholarship and like, hey, come study here, or travel because someone who has deep pocket be like, this cat's doing good. Let me put some money behind him in the form of a scholarship. And you have that happening across universities all over the world. I mean, even Berkeley, I've heard a lot of people who have gone there says, I didn't go there for the education. I went for the connection. You can be connected to some people that you wouldn't be able to get a chance to be in the same room with by just being at Berkeley. A lot of bands who are crushing it today, the players met at Berkeley, and then they decide to start and go off from there. So that's how I look at college. And so I would say for someone who just say, should I go to college if I want to become mainstream? Like David says, you kind of have to know why you want to go. When I just started, I didn't know why I was going. It was just like, I had nothing else to do with my life. I was like, here is something that I'm interested in. Let's go and see where it leads.
Right.
But I think that should be a discussion that music colleges should have with students. There should be like a class on that, really trying to get deep to figuring out your purpose. Because I think that's why a lot of people drop out. When you're 18, 19, you're kind of just like, go to school, go to music school. But you haven't really thought through that. And it's kind of hard to think through it because you don't really know what's on the other end. The expectation for most people going for a music school is that I'm either going to get picked up by a record label or by a band sometime within this 4 years, or if I don't get picked up by the time I graduate, I'll be able to go, work for a studio or work for some band or something. And when that doesn't happen, you kind of have to figure something out. I've seen many of my colleagues that graduate with a music degree go back to school for something else, nursing, welding, or whatever. And I'm just like, man, after spending all that time and money and effort, you kind of at the end just realize that music can't put food on the table. I got to go figure something out.
Yeah, the scariest time at the university is that last semester and you don't have a gig. You don't have a regular gig and you're trying to figure out, how do I make it as a musician And now, if you're a gospel musician, you can try to get on with the church. But if that's not your thing, how do you make it? What do you do?
Because the
Yeah.
only so the sort of options for someone coming out of the traditional music schools is you go start your own band, which means you're gonna either have to write your own music or play cover music, something like that, or you try to find a band to play with. In either case, again, same situation. You're either going to play cover music or you're helping someone else to write their music. Or you go apply for a job in a school, teach music.
That's it.
Or you go try to start your own music school. In all of these areas, I mean, apart from the apply to a school for music, all the other areas are extremely hard to make a living in. I mean, starting a piano studio from scratch takes time to find clientele, and at some point, I'm sure all of us have done that. I have done that for many years, and it was tough.
Yeah, I think I think you articulated those three well, because I've always kind of said that the musicians tend to fall in either the performance category, the producing category, and all of that, whatever producing
Teaching.
requires, or the teaching category, right? So, and I don't know, because I don't have a lot of knowledge in this, but I do interview like people like Phil Cornish, and one of the things that he said that actually just kind of I thought about a lot was he talked about putting yourself in the room, like just putting yourself where people are. And I thought it was a great point you made about some of the colleges. If you're coming from a place where there is nobody, you just can't think that just staying in your own town, small town, and just gaining in your music skills is going to do anything. It's not, because you're not in anywhere. So putting yourself in certain locations, and that would be, I think, because I think music is still driven by networking more than anything. It's going to be that way. It's going to be who you know. And when you find out, and you ask these guys, how did you get to play for this big guy? How did you get to, it's always, oh, such and such told me, you need to check out this guy. Nobody said, the school told me to, nobody. So I think networking, I think music is always going to be driven by the networking and the relationships that you build with people, and them knowing of your quality, of your excellence. I think that plays a lot into it.
I think when we're trying to look for ways of how do you have music as a full-time job, I was thinking about when you were saying, Warren, about those people you knew that went back to school for another career. They went back to something that had a much clearer path. So like they go into nursing and then they get the certification, which then they turn that certification into a hospital, and the hospital says, okay, you're qualified, so I'm going to give you a job. In music, it doesn't work that way. Yeah, you may get a certification, and the things that acknowledge that certification may be like the Board of Education where you're from or something like that. But other than that, in terms of being a performer,
Doesn't mean anything.
It doesn't mean anything. It means very little. And
Yep.
it's really about, okay, navigating, like, honestly, I often think about it like this. You have to be a hustler. Like, there's no other way around it. You have to be a darn good hustler. Like Sean's talking about it, the networking. I wouldn't, I'm not saying I disagree. I would say I wouldn't only leave it to networking, but it's like networking, how marketable you are, like not leaving it to one thing, because you could be a great networker, you could be a great marketer, and then you don't have the skills for the job, right? And so it's about like a combination of so many different things that you need to put together. And
So I'm hearing a lot of, we got to network, we got to market, we got to network, we got to market. What does that really mean, though? How, for someone watching this video on YouTube in their small town, like, how do I even begin to do these network and marketing? These people I'm talking about, 17, 18, 19 years old, just graduating high school. How do I make this into a tangible thing that I could follow? Like, okay, well, what does networking mean? Do I just crash parties and how does it work?
I think, well, from my experience, what I did was I paid attention to the local market first. I wasn't trying to be a world class musician before my time. I like people know me in my city. Let me build those relationships here. Show up, be a kind person, a good hang. You know, you spend more time hanging with people than playing. So I want to be a person that you can talk to, we can crack jokes with. Be an asset, you know, not just another body in the band. Like, I don't need, if I'm playing the chords, I don't need you playing the same chords as me or whatever, you know, things like that, making the band better, things like that. And once I build the momentum in my local town, then I use that energy or that, you know, the hype, I want to say hype, you know, but you know, the momentum to take it and move it further, move it forward and bring it online and use the online to really spread your message with that support behind you.
So show up.
Yeah.
Show up when you say you're going to show up. Right. Show up on time. Be prepared.
Yeah.
And present a good attitude. Just be able to hang, be respectful. And if you continue to do those things, that's how the networking begins to build.
And all of that has nothing to do with your
skills.
Technical ability. Right.
Yeah, that's part of building the marketing and networking side.
And I would just add to that, just don't be afraid to talk to people. Just talk.
Yeah.
Talk. Get people's number. Reach out. Talk. Because I know a lot of guys, and I was good to this. You know, I go and play, then I'm out. I'm going home. You know, I wasn't trying to hang.
Yeah. You got to do some hanging for real.
Yeah.
And we're not saying you got to go to a rave party afterwards and stumbling home at 4:00 in the morning, but you got to put in some face time, because a lot of the relationship building is not going to happen on the bandstand.
Right.
You know, it's in the green room, or after the gig when everybody's packing up, or before the gig when, you know, the pre-hang. So those things are important. Any addition from you guys? How does someone build this network? Was never done this before.
I mean, what I did and I've had to do it twice when I lived in Fresno, which is one of those cities. It's like there's a music scene in Fresno. Like, how you gonna make it? And then when I came out here to Dallas, is I literally went to Craigslist and I said I'm gonna play for bands for free. And this was just so people knew who I was. And I thought about it for a bit before this, and I realized it's kind of the same thing that we're doing, right? We put free content out there in the hopes of, like, we attract this audience, and then we hope that some of this audience becomes, like, they see the value in what they can get from us, and then they become paid subscribers on our sites. Well, I was thinking through the same thing with that, right? Like, I play for people for free, I meet people, and then they're like, I want to bring that guy on a gig. And eventually that's how I did it both times. And so I made sure I talked to people, and believe it or not, man, I'm a very shy person. So like coming out and trying to talk to people was very tough for me, but I would just still do it. I would say, what's up, man? Where are you from? That type of thing. Sometimes I would even, it's so stupid. Other times I think I would write out questions of what I would say.
Really? I did not know that.
Man, I was extremely shy, you know? And so, yeah, but I think that was really helpful in just making myself like more appealing to other people. Oh, this is a cool cat that you want to work with. And so,
I'm in the process of doing the same thing right now, because I just moved down to Jacksonville last October. Nobody knows who I am locally. I don't know anything. So the first thing I do, I find myself at church. After the service, I went up to the band. Hey, man, how you guys doing? Blah, 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 blah. I play the keyboard also. Oh, cool. Really, man? Oh, yeah, man. I'm on YouTube. Here's a channel. They see that and they're like, yo, what you doing Tuesday? Nothing. The band rehearsed on Tuesday. You want to roll in? Sure. And so I'm starting to build that connection, knowing cats. Once you know a few cats, they're going to know other musicians that they can start referring you to. So I'm in the process of doing the same thing. Yeah, you got to get out of your shell.
You know, I think David made a really good point too about starting out for free. I've given that advice to some people, because it's kind of like, it's hard because you're in a city where you may be in a city where everybody knows you, you know, and then you go to a new city and you're like, well, this is my baseline, you know, this is how much I should be making. nobody knows you. They don't know. So I've had to move to different cities. So like if you're watching this on like YouTube, and you may have to say, you know what? Because here's the thing: if you're really good and if you're skilled enough, yeah, go in there. Give them a free service, and don't get taken advantage of too. Because I know of musicians who they'll do like 2 months for free. Well, now you've set a precedent now. See, so you can't do that. So, I go in there. I'll show them something. I said, let me just come and play for you, and then we can have that discussion. Because at that point, they should know. And in many cases, sometimes I've gotten more than what I would have asked for, just because they'll see you play. They're like, okay, compared to the last guy, this guy can play. This is what we were paying our last guy. Let's put him here. You know what I'm saying? So sometimes just you being able to show up and show them without having to, So I thought that was a great point he made in terms of the, just kind of putting yourself out there and not being worried about money initially could actually be more beneficial, I think, down the line.
And I think that's a great point that you all have made, Devin and Sean and Warren. And I think it really goes back to the first question you asked, Warren, about why do some musicians make it that have school, don't make it that have had formal education, some do. There is a process. It's a real technical process called paying your dues that everyone has to go through. And so one of the things is there's this thought that if I got my degree in music, I've paid my due. And so now give me what I deserve.
Who do you pay the dues to?
But no, you haven't paid. You paid your dues to
the school.
Yeah, Atlanta, or you haven't paid your dues in Dallas or Jacksonville. You haven't paid those dues yet, and so the dues are less, and if the better you are, the less dues you're going to end up paying. But everybody, to some degree, has to pay dues, and I think that's the missing thing that people don't realize when they graduate school.
Yeah, it's this expectation. They're treating. I think this is one of the major disconnect, is because people are treating a music degree the same thing as a math degree or a science degree, biology, engineering degree, where you have a degree, all you need to do is, send in a resume somewhere and you get hired. Music degree, unless you're applying to a school, doesn't work like that. I've never played for a church or a band and been asked anything about my musical training. First thing someone's going to say, here's a list of music, show up for rehearsal. That's your resume. And based on how you perform in that first rehearsal, determines if you get the gig or not.
Yep.
That's it. Nobody cares how many years you spend and how many back pieces you can play, or, if you can sight read. None of that matters. It's, can you play? Can you do the job? Yes or no? And I think that's one of the disconnect. A lot of people aren't willing to, one, you have to market yourself. You got to put yourself out there. You got to show up. You got to show up prepared. You got to show up on time. You have to be able to hang. You have to be able to, work with everybody in the band. And I think that's why some people who are even lesser skilled make it and others don't. Because some people, again, have this entitlement when they show up. Well, I've went to this college, and so I can show up whatever time I want. If I want to come half hour late, I'm good enough, So yeah.
Warren, can I make a statement to that? It's just maybe just a little bit out there. It's maybe a little bit different.
Let's go out there. I like it.
No, I think musicians learning how to build an audience, social media, online, could be beneficial, because it requires a different, building an audience is at the heart of it, right? Even if you're selling or something, you have to learn how to build an audience. Funny story here. Like, I'm the least relatable. I have the least subscribers at this point. Yeah, Corey says to me, Sean, I saw you have a channel. I started my channel. Next thing you know, he's way past me. Then Daquan comes up. Daquan says, Sean, I'm gonna, man, I really like what you're doing. Daquan just hit. Congrats, by the way. Daquan just hit everybody. Daquan just hit 50,000. I'm still at my 40. So,
Thanks, bro.
so, but my point is that trying to learn how to build an audience. I mean, these guys have learned. I'll be honest with you. And I'm just going to just kind of give this honesty statement. I kind of still struggle with relating the concepts that are. I think it's a constant process that musicians have. Like, I may have a certain knowledge in a certain way I want to say, but how do I do this in a way that people can understand, right? And so I think that's the struggle. And I think social media can help with that, and just kind of putting your things out there and just kind of find out what works for people. And I think that I know it's an out there comment. I mean, because I'm not saying that they have to have social media, but I think it's important. I think learning how to build an audience and learning how to build and seeing what works with people, I think that could be something too that people could work on.
Sean, I think that's a really good comment, because something I struggled with for the longest time was, even if I could get myself in the door, which I seem to be able to manage that, it seemed that I never really was relatable often to my environment that I was trying to play in. So I don't know if you guys watch Worship Leader Hangout much, but like it's kind of funny. I only really played gospel for about 4 or 5 years. I only really got jobs at white churches, so that it was really CCM churches before and after, right? And I grew up in the Bahamas, so I didn't grow up in the African American context of understanding what it means to be churchy. So like I dissect the language. That's the only way I can do it. But when it comes to like trying to get some of those gospel gigs, right? The guys used to tell me all the time, dude, you know the chords, but you're just not churchy enough. And something I had to accept was, and I only did this within the last 2 years, is I only can be the best me. And sometimes I have to go ahead and say no to jobs that I know that aren't going to be the best representation of me.
Right.
And I think in building your audience, you have to be as genuine as you can be. You can't be somebody else, And so I try to fit my YouTube channel. I have 2 of them now, both in that CCM wannabe gospel space, because that's where I'm at. And I accept it. So,
and man, you're not the only one.
You shine in it too. You know what I'm saying? And so you're doing the right thing. We're all doing the right thing.
Yeah.
So.
You're not the only one, Devin. I have a similar struggle. I was born and raised in Jamaica. I only came to the United States in 2009. And I wasn't playing anything gospel back then. Jamaica, I was a part of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, which is, if it's not hymns, it's something that resembles CCM. I wouldn't even call it full-on CCM. Because when I was leaving Jamaica in 2009, the drums still was not accepted as part of the Adventist Church. So it's just piano or organ, and not the organ that we know, a pipe organ, not the Hammond B3. So my musical experience was very different. I didn't grow up with the Southern gospel, Black gospel stuff. Then I went to college and I studied classical piano for 8 years. While studying classical piano, I was still, my ears were still into jazz department. I was trying to learn some jazz stuff and some jazz chords and repertoire. So it wasn't until I really came to the United States and I'm like, oh, I gotta sound gospel now, that I sort of went on a journey to start studying and learning what makes this stuff gospel. So I still feel like an outsider to this day, trying to get into the gospel space. I feel like I could fake my way through it, but it's not something I grew up with. I'm learning it, and as I learn, I bring people along the journey through the YouTube channel. That's how I see it. So, like you said, to be the best person you can be to represent the stuff you can do the best, instead of constantly trying to say you're this or say you're that. I teach people what I know and how I play gospel music. And if that resonates with you, what I teach and how I play resonates with you, I could teach you how to do that. A lot of people might say, Warren, you don't do a lot of shout piano on your stuff. And I said, yeah, because I still don't know how to do that stuff well. I mean, I know I can understand what the guys are doing from a theoretical perspective, but it's not something I grew up playing. And even while I was here in the United States, none of the church that I've played at really do the shout thing. So,
Daquan can
you
do all
know,
the shout stuff.
yeah,
I
Daquan's a
mean,
shout guy. If you
no,
want to shout,
I'm rusty. I'm a little rusty.
you know, so it's like I still don't feel like I know enough of that stuff to say, yeah, I'm a shout pianist. They just, you know, so
Mhm.
I just don't teach it as much because I don't know much about it. You know, continue to research more. But I also think the gospel music scene is kind of moving away from shout. A lot of the churches, I mean, even here in Jacksonville that I visit, there isn't a lot of shout going on anymore. So I don't know
Yeah.
if that's the same for you guys, church or not.
Not out
I-
here in Dallas.
No shout in Dallas?
Oh no, they shouting at these churches, man. Oh boy. I'm not there all the time. I play for a church downtown, but man, when I do get called from time to time, it's like, oh gosh, bring somebody else.
What about you, Corey? A lot of shouting going on up there?
Well, at my church, when we were back in meeting, we're still doing the virtual thing, but it might have, once a month, on a good month, maybe twice a month. My church is kind of a non-denominational, like center of the road kind of non-denominational church, but yeah, it's still happening.
What about you, Sean?
No, well, no. Let me change that. I play in front of old missionary Baptist church with the mothers and the deacons, and it depends on what I do. I mean, I can make them go there if I want. By the way, it's just me. It's just me. I don't have a band.
Really? Are you doing like the rock, keyboard, bass, and stuff?
I'm doing. You know what? I used to do all that stuff. I used to have like the layers, and the left hand is doing my bass, and the right hand's doing my keys, and all these fancy. But I've been pared it down, man, because I'm so now into the social media side of things that I just don't put as much effort. I know it sounds bad, but I just show up I'm showing up to the rehearsal like, oh, what's it again? What y'all want to do? Like,
He trying to get fired. He trying to get fired on purpose.
no, they love me, man.
Oh,
Look,
okay.
they love me. It's a little. See, here's the thing. This is a whole nother concept, but. When I've been at those kind of big churches, and on Saturday I still play for the 6-7 piece band and all that. But on my the church I go to on Sunday, it's just me, and it's like one of these churches that just kind of show up and just start singing a devotional song kind of thing. You know?
Oh,
what I'm saying?
wow. It's one of them church. Wow.
Kind of like that. So yeah, man, it's just kind
Find
of
a key and play along.
Yeah, but I don't say shot. But I wanted to mention something though with that from what you and David and what you and David were saying as far as something I've always noticed. There's a book called Unfair Advantage, and I don't remember who it's by, and it basically says that everybody has an unfair advantage in something, and that when you capitalize on what that is, right? That what is it that you have that you may have been exposed to when you were younger that can give you a leg up on your competition, right? So, and I think that's really an important point because I think for musicians, you may find that you may have had something that, like, for instance, David said that he didn't grow up with like the heavy gospel, right? And Warren, so they ended up on the thing that they did have an advantage in, and capitalizing on that. You understand what I'm saying? So for me, I grew up. My dad used to play all these kind of crazy chords on the organ. I could never figure out what it was, but I'm just now realizing, when I started my YouTube channel, that actually helped me develop my ear really great. You see what I'm saying? Because so that would be mine, being exposed to an advanced chord vocabulary when I was younger. That gave me an advantage of being able to maybe pick out some of these chords. So I think that's interesting because we find that when we have that advantage in something, sometimes we can find it difficult to try to cross over, but maybe we don't actually have to go and cross all the way over in somebody else's whatever somebody else is really good at.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Somebody could be great at shout, and guess what? If somebody's really good at shout, they could probably go and start a YouTube channel right now, and if they're a great teacher, they can get a lot because there's not a lot of people like really teaching in a systematic way. What I'm saying is, like, just kind of find out what we have as far as that gives us maybe an advantage. Because everybody here, that's what makes our YouTube channel successful, is because we have something that's above the competition in some area
Yeah.
that other people recognize. And then we capitalize on that. And it's not all music, it's usually a specific segment. You know what I'm saying? It's a specific thing in the music that we're all really good at. And then people notice that, and then we teach that. So I think that's the thing that everybody should do, is just kind of find out what you have an advantage in, and build on that, and shore up your weaknesses too, but make those strengths shine out there.
That's such
Cool.
a great point, Sean. Because oftentimes we focus on our disadvantage, what I didn't have, and I have a lot of students come to me, Corey, I didn't have this, and it becomes a woe is me story. But your disadvantage could be your advantage. Like for
Hmm.
me, I didn't start playing gospel. I'm kind of similar to Warren. I didn't start playing gospel music till I was 17, like a couple months before I went to college. So I didn't grow up in it. I'm not. I don't sound like a typical gospel musician. And when I started learning gospel piano, I was also learning jazz. So my sound, when it's gospel. Yeah, so it's not the traditional gospel sound. And I would love to try to play like some of the guys like Mike Burrell's and Floyd Henry's, but that's not my lane. That's not how I sound. So I sound the way I sound, and then I found out that there's a space for my sound too.
Yeah.
There's a space for my sound too.
And Corey grew up in where he grew up, so he's going to have an advantage growing up in that Brooklyn, growing up in that kind of the New York sound. So everybody's shaped by those early influences, and I think it gives them
Pretty
you
good.
know,
Corey, you mentioned a good point. You said there's a space for your sound.
Mm,
And I think that's important for viewers to realize, is like, you have your own unique sound when it comes to whatever genre of music you want to play. And do your best, I would say, to recognize that. And then when you can, try to find spaces that amplify that and encourage that.
hmm
And that won't happen all the time. I'm not in a space now where I do any gospel whatsoever, right? But the skills that I learned in gospel are so advantageous to me, and so I would say just use that to your advantage.
hmm
Awesome. Well, I got one last question for you guys before I let you go. I know time's short for us today. One last question. For someone who's watching this video right now and say, I would love to be self-employed musician, doing what these cats are doing. Because, over the last 10 years, online music education has exploded.
hmm
And if that wasn't enough, the pandemic showed a lot of us that online education is more necessary than ever. So for someone who's like, I would love to get into being my own music teacher, being my own, music entrepreneur, what is one or two things would you say to them? What do they need to start doing today and sort of dig deep in that to do what we're doing?
Well, I'll jump in and start. Um, as we mentioned earlier, you have to pay your dues. So start teaching. Make sure make sure you have a great understanding of the information, but then start teaching. And when you first start teaching, it's not going to be great. You're gonna say the wrong things, and then be adaptable. Listen and like, okay, maybe I could have communicated that better. That's one of the things I'm always working on. Is how can I communicate this idea clearer and more succinctly, right? And so as you grow in this, you start developing those things, and really trying to perfect your craft. Uh, Keep banging and don't give up. That'll be the things I tell you.
Yeah, I would say gain experience, accept everything until you get to a point where you can say no. And when you do that, you get to learn. Everything is a learning opportunity. I've done like bar gigs, and I learned like, okay, I have to have a repertoire of 60, 70 songs that I have to pull out at any moment. That taught me experience. And if you want to teach later down the road, you have that experience to teach people, like, okay, this is what you need to do if you want to do a gig. You have to learn music, and just once you build your experience, and then those experiences are going to be teaching moments that you can teach people in the future.
well, I would say, I would say to put out a post on Instagram, and start with one person. Say, hey, I'm starting. Like in terms of just direct practical, I would just tell them, hey, because if somebody likes your sound, going back to what David said, the first thing is now. Let me say some sharp comments here. If nobody, if you can't build an audience of free people, of people who will listen to what you're doing for free, and you're asking them to pay you, right, for your so it starts and that's why I said in terms of building the audience, right? So here's my thing. Out of every, we're musicians, but we're also business people, so we talk about things like conversion rates and stuff like that. So, out of every 100 people that listen to us, maybe there's one or two people who may be interested in buying, right? So we can convert that to a percentage, right? So you're going to have to start building an audience, and you're going to have to start putting yourself out there and saying, "Hey guys, I want to start a course. I want to start teaching." To be honest with you, I would start one-on-one first. I wouldn't start straight from course, because there's some skills you need to learn about teaching one-on-one before you can try to bring that thing to the masses.
Online. Yep.
So I would say start one-on-one, kind of get used to the kind of questions you get with the one-on-one people, and develop that. Maybe you can go to 3 or 4, because you can, just with 10 or 15 people, you could already be beating your church job, by the way. You understand what I'm saying? Like,
Facts.
just with 10 or 15 people paying you, you could already be beating what you make in a church. So it doesn't take a lot. And so, yeah, I would start by just kind of doing one-on-one people, trying to develop those selling skills and stuff like that, and then just kind of expand it out. Yeah, but that's what I'd say.
Yeah, that's a good idea. You could tell when you look online on YouTube, the people who have experience doing one-on-one teaching versus the ones who have never taught a single soul in their life, and now they're teaching on YouTube. There's a distinction, and the skills that you develop teaching one-on-one, you won't get that. You won't develop that skill trying to teach online. So that's a very good idea for anyone who wants to break into the online space. If you've never taught before, get a few people from the community, spend at least a year teaching them. And that will give you a lot of skills that you can then capitalize on when you're trying to teach the masses.
Because Corey, and I'll add this: there's a lot of guys who could probably double their income, easily make 6-figure income just because of how good they are. But learning how to communicate what you're doing, and Corey stated this earlier, being able to communicate what it is you're doing up here, that's difficult unless you've done it before. Mm-hmm. Right? So I come from a teaching background. So I came from teaching 15 years before I started. So that's something that, again, that unfair advantage that I was saying, that would be mine, because I'm in the school, I'm in the classroom, I'm doing this stuff, right? But if somebody's already playing and they're really great, that doesn't necessarily mean you can just jump straight into this thing. And so that's the reason I say that. I think it does require kind of going in slowly, but they could make more than all of us. You mean, like, you get the right person, and he already has an audience of 500,000 followers and stuff. These people could kill it, man. Like, you know what I'm saying? They can go in there and kill it. But like I said, it's difficult to relate.
One of the things I've come to realize is, one, which most of you guys I'm sure notice, being a great player doesn't make you a great teacher.
Exactly.
Right.
Because just as how you have to put in years of hard practice to become a good player, you also need to put in years of teaching to become a good teacher. It is a skill that you have to develop and constantly develop. And so there's this false perception. A lot of people think, because I can crush it as a player, I'm going to become a teacher. Right. And then when they fall flat, they just give up, not realizing that, you might be up here with your playing, but you got to take your teaching from here and bring it back up to here. And that takes time, patience, communication, listening to your student, and pivoting, because some people might think, I'm already good, so you need to listen to everything I say. And the student's like, but I don't understand. Well, you don't understand because you're just probably not good at music. I've had people come to me and said their last teacher was frustrated with them for not learning, thinking there's something wrong with them, why they're not getting it. And I said, that's how you know you're in the wrong place. Because if the teacher is blaming you for not learning, that's the problem.
Yeah.
You know, and so that in itself takes patience that you also have to develop. Be willing to work with someone. You might be playing all the craziest substitutions and drop twos and crazy licks in line, but then someone come to you and say, I'm a beginner. You're going to have to tone that way down to the point where it's almost painful. This is how you play your C major scale. Not everybody is willing to step off that pedestal and come all the way down to be able to relate to someone like that. And so these are some skills for anyone who wants to get into online teaching. You have to be willing to develop these skills. You know, you might see us show off, you know, stuff from time to time, but when times come to teaching, we know we got to have to put that to the side. And that's something I had to learn when I got on YouTube, realizing that the stuff that I was doing that I thought was simple for the average person, it was way beyond their understanding. I had to break it down. And how do I begin to know that? By listening. People saying, yo, way too complex, moving too fast. So then I go, okay, next video, I'm going to simplify it and I'm going to move slower. And you constantly listen and you tweak. You listen and you tweak till you get to the place where people start saying, yeah, man, I'm learning, I'm understanding. That's how your subscribers starts to grow. That's how your followers starts to grow, by you relating and, you know, meeting those students where they are at their level. It's not about you. It's about them.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, I'd say the hardest part to like doing anything. So let's say somebody looks at our channels and they're like, man, I want to be where they're at. The hardest part about doing anything is starting. And I do sometimes think you can overthink, you know, do I have everything right? Like if you guys look at Worship Leader Hangout first videos, I mean, they were crappy. I mean, trash. We shot them on webcams on our computer, right? But like we started and we kept going. And for our first 3 years, we had 200 subscribers. That would be very discouraging. But we just kept going. We kept pushing. You know what I mean? By year 4, it was 3,000. Year 5, 10,000. That's actually not a lot. We were, and then all of a sudden, year 6, we go from 10,000 to almost, I think it was like 100,000 in a year. And so you really just have to keep the drive. And I'm a big person to drive. And something else I would think about too is ask yourself, what makes me unique in this marketplace?
Mhm.
You know, YouTube is full of a bunch of teachers. And like, if you don't have something that you can figure out that makes you unique, and maybe it's time, maybe it's just time that's going to let that happen. You won't know off the bat,
Yeah.
but you do need to ask yourself that constantly, what makes me unique? And I think each of the guys here, they know what makes them unique, you know? And so you have to ask yourself that question. Something I thought about, and this is a little bit unrelated, but I think if you look on our YouTube statistics or whatever, you can actually see that many of the same people that watch my channel also watch Warren and Sean and Daquan and Corey, which is very interesting because there are other YouTube teachers out there, but those channels didn't show up. And it seems that people like the technical aspect of like being able to not just these are the chords, but how did you arrive to these chords? That seems to be a common thread between many of our channels. So,
Well, I think also we all serve only gospel musicians. That's pretty much the people we're talking to. So yeah.
One more thing. I think, you know, we said, you know, finding a way to stand out. That would be, I think that also includes non-musical things. Like even something that I noticed from you all is that most of your piano and the digital piano is on the bottom of your lessons. So even for something for me, it's like, okay, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to put mine on the top.
No, I thought about that. I was like,
that's the only reason why mine is on the top. So, you know, it's just small stuff like that, you know, it can be something that makes you stand out from someone else. It's not always about the chords.
Yep.
And things like
For
that.
me, it's always those sunset backgrounds.
Yep.
You know, if you look at my people just say, dude, how you find all these beautiful sunset backgrounds? That was just something I decided from early, you know, because, you know, doing the green screen is like, what am I going to put behind me?
Right.
I was like, I'm just going to stick with sunsets. I've changed it up occasionally, use different things, but predominantly, once someone see my video, they know it's mine. There's a sunset behind you, you know?
Yeah,
the
for
only-
me, for me, you know, everybody, most of the musician guys, you know, might have a cap on, and they kind of dress down and kind of like.
Sean always got his cap
I'm trying to
on.
be like Sean.
Okay.
It's because of my hair. It's because my haircut. I ain't never have no haircut, and I'm like, listen, they ain't about to see my nappy head.
I was like, I want to go the opposite route to Daquan's point. I'm like, so you always see me like collared, you know, button shirt, and it makes maybe it's a square look. I don't know, but it's different.
Yeah. The only issue with mine is you see my whole outfit, so I gotta make sure my whole outfit. I just can't have a shirt. I gotta make sure my pants is good. So I recommend Yahweh.
Yeah.
All right, so there you have it. We had a lot of fun there just talking and sharing ideas. It was a great panel discussion. I trust that you guys learned a lot. You guys also find it entertaining. So in the comment section, I'd love to hear what you guys think. Do you think it's worth going to college if you want to become a mainstream musician? Or I should say going to school of music, because there's a difference in just regular college versus a college that is designed for music education. Do you think it's worth it in 2021 for someone to pursue that route if they want to become a professional musician? Love to hear your thoughts and your comments in the comment section down below. Lastly, all these wonderful guys that I had the discussion with, I want you to go and check out their channel, subscribe to their channel. They also teach in the gospel music niche, and they offer a lot of other things that you might not see on my channel. So I'm sure there's something for you to learn from them. So head over there, shoot them a subscribe. All right? Until then, keep listening, keep singing, and keep practicing. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button here as well, and the notification bell if you're new to the channel. Thank you for watching this lengthy video, but I'm sure there was a lot of interesting things and takeaways. So until then, see you next week.